Thank you for tuning in today to today's Destination LoRaWAN webcast. We will begin shortly. All right, we'll go ahead and begin today's webcast. The topic is focused on delivering quantifiable ROI for IoT deployments and solutions enabled with LoRaWAN. Our panelists will talk about some different use cases, showing the different ways ROI can be achieved with LoRaWAN. Before we start, we do have a few reminders to make the most out of your webcast experience today. If you find your video or slides are behind, it helps to refresh your screen, and if you are still having technical issues, there is a help box in the toolbar along the bottom of your screen. The panelists will be answering questions from the audience at the end of the webcast, so please submit any questions you have throughout the webcast in the box labeled Q&A on your screen. You can submit those at any time while the panelists are presenting, and we will have a discussion at the end. Lastly, an on-demand version of this webcast will be available in about 24 hours, and you can request the webcast by clicking the same link you used to join today. We want to recognize our sponsors who make the Destination LoRaWAN program and all our webcasts possible. Thank you to Machine Q, a Comcast company, as the Destination LoRaWAN Gold sponsor. And thank you to the two silver sponsors, Birdz and Charter Communication. You can learn more about all of our sponsors by clicking on the Engagement Hub link in the resources box on your console. All right, and then we have today's agenda. We have our speakers. I'm Ashley Pope, Oxit, host of the webcast. We also have Nicholas Jordan from Actility, who will be presenting on smart construction and indoor air quality monitoring. We have Bruno Hemamalan, I'm going to say that wrong, I'm so sorry, Bruno, from Birdz, who's going to be talking about achieving the benefits of a smart environment. We have Dave Smith from Option, who's going to be talking about DigiKey deploying option-safe distance contact tracing solutions. And then finally, we're going to have Josh Cox from Oxit, who's going to talk about decision strategy and solution expansion for ROI and IoT. And I'll pass that off now.
Thank you, Ashley. So I'm Nicholas Jordan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Actility and Habiway. A few words about the company. Actility is providing public and private LoRaWAN networks, and Habiway is more specialized by providing tracking, human tracking or asset tracking in the different use cases. We are going to talk about two types of ROI. The first one will be related to construction sites with a very important global company called Bouygues Construction, and there is another use cases I'm going to describe is related to air quality. So let's start with the construction sites. So just before getting into the ROI, you have to just the way the use case is related to the fact that there are trackers, LoRaWAN trackers and BLE beacons that has been attached to big and smaller tools, like up to the drill, for example, for BLE beacons, and largest one, like a crane, where trackers has been attached. You have a centralized real-time location capability software that is provided by the company called Omniscient. And of course, where you can have a dashboard where coming from the data to provide the different ROI scenario that I will describe on the next slides. So first of all, that you really understand what we are talking about around ROI, potentially a very important construction company. They are managing millions of euros of equipment and are owned and often also lease to specialized suppliers. And this, of course, as you can imagine, it's extremely costly. Equip each construction site with equipment. It must be conform to a standard and must be in a very good condition working orders, because if you have an issue with a large equipment, it can have a cost by delaying the constructions the work that is going right now. Optimize the fleet and reduce the depreciations, reduce the storage, means make sure that the tools that are really used, reduce the cost of the storage of the electrical equipment, make sure that the tools that might be overused may be put it out to be replaced before it will be broken. It's also part of the value that has a very economic impact. And of course, as you may imagine, by having the capability to track, the object is to guarantee the availability of the equipment on each site. So the challenge is really the planning issue, because if there is any lack of anticipation or budget overrun, and it's bringing a low profitability for the construction site. So we have up to now equipped 20,000 equipment, as I said, crane, lifting tools, bungalows, power-handled tools like a drill, work platforms, of over 1,000 sites. The management of the tools fleet, equipment fleet, is today providing, thanks to that tool, and limited to 5 technical guys, where you can imagine that it's around 100 people has been involved. That's also a very important cost reductions because without any tracking solutions, the number of people has to be involved to really manage the equipment fleet is much higher. And today, this deployment are done in France and in Switzerland. So just a few words technically again. So we track big assets with the GPS, Wi-Fi, BLE sensors, LoRaWAN based, of course. And what also we did, we extend the capability to track much smaller tools like the drill. And so we can attach the tracker, LoRaWAN tracker, to the toolbox, for example, and make sure that the equipment, when someone is leaving the site, has been put it back into the toolbox, because we attach BLE trackers for the smaller tools. Additional to that, Omniscient is using other technology like QR code and NFC for also other tools where it's not possible to attach a BLE sensor. So now you get the concept. Let's talk about in more details exactly the gain that has been is generating thanks to these systems. So as I said, the first important gain is the fact that you have real-time data. All the decisions, the follow-up, the operational follow-up, and the resources that you have to put in place to follow the inventory of the tools has been dramatically reduced, or even positively reduced, if I may say, and it's bringing very important cost reductions. And it's, if you separate, you see, it represents a bit less than half of the cost reductions. Better management of resource allocations, identify the equipment on site that can be mobilized to avoid external rental. Oftenly in this business, you sometimes, oh, where is my crane? I need to rent one, but stupidly because it has not been assigned to the right site. And this is where you really can optimize the positioning of all the equipment and tools on the right side, because you really have a real times of knowing about where are your tools over your 1,000 sites, and you can anticipate. You have also a better stock management, so you can reduce your stock cost, and it represents 10% of the reductions. You can also optimize because you know when the tools are used in the tools, you can track how oftenly they have been used, so you can increase the quality from the life cycle of the equipment and avoid upgrade costs by monitoring if the tools must be replaced in advance, if it's fully amortized, and that's quite important. The last component element is related to the billing assistance, because everything that is used in the construction site has to be rebuilt, and there is almost a real-time billing capability follow-up when you know when there is an entry equipment, an exit equipment. I'm more talking about for large equipment that are almost totally re-went or resell, and that's bring also a strong value around it. Okay, so at the end, when you sum everything, you have on the sites from 5 to 10% annual savings, and it's quite impressive. by adding LoRaWAN sensors and all this service, the connectivity and equipment, you can get an ROI less than 3 years. And that's so today, the construction is quite happy about what we are deploying together. Okay, so that was my first ROI example. Now I'm changing the subject and more talking about air quality and temperature monitoring. So before, again, you have to understand exactly what you are talking about and the impact. So CO2 concentration in the room, in the buildings, more you have CO2 concentration, less comfortable it is for the people who are inside. And if the building is poorly ventilated, you increase the CO2 into the room. So there are a lot of sources, and I have some few of them in that slides. In the US, the Environmental Protection Agency, that shows that people spend almost 80% of their time indoor, and often 2 times higher than typical outdoor concentration. So optimization of the air quality in the room is essential to really increase the productivity of the workers. In that graphic here, you can see here in that line the type of task that can be done, and regarding the concentrations, the parts per million of the CO2 ppm, and you can see here, if you are here more on the top use case, you are able to manage nicely and all the potential simple and complex tasks for the end user, and less the quality of the air is, then less efficient you will be. So here there is an example in space of 4 square meters occupied by 1 person, so can rise from 500 ppm to more than 1000 ppm in just 45 minutes, and it creates headaches, poor concentrations, and reduce the productivity. And you can see here even above 2000 ppm is of course the connective capability are completely reduced. And in Belgium, the royal decree has declared, so in the law, that the workspace are generally much less than 900 ppm. So that's another subject related to the air quality is related to the impact of the COVID. So again, more you stay in the room without any ventilations, more the aerosol is increasing, and you increasing your risk of infections of the coronavirus. So it's key to have a ventilated door, but you need to be able to monitor it here. So you can see in this graphic, the air quality decreasing, increase your risk of get affected by the COVID. So here, if you have a good quality air exchange, you may see that here, in that case, your risk to get caught the COVID-19 is mainly heavily reduced. If you had to this air quality monitoring systems, even tracking, tracing systems with proximity detection, then you can really protect your workers and avoid any potential shutdown of the factory in case of COVID-19 issue. That's an example on schools. We are in France here right now. They start to monitor the air quality in school. By the law, it's mandatory to open the windows within the school between every class, at least once per 2 hours. But we have the equivalent of this type of project in South America, in Argentina. So there is more and more demands to be able to use IoT and sensors to control the CO2 within the room. So the solution is based on sensors, LoRaWAN sensors coming from LCs and parametric, the connectivity from Actility, and there is an applications provided by our partner WMW. There is a demo kit that can be acquired through our marketplace. So let's now discuss in details about the ROI. If we get back to the school, the data came from air quality from the scientific finding resource here from the Oregon US University. So school absence is one of the things that you can see if you increase too much the CO2. That's why it's related to the type of demand that we have received. So you have also additional value by measuring the work performance regarding the temperature, because let's say the quality of the workers is also related to not only to the CO2 but also to the temperature. And based on the study, that you will see that there is financial benefits from roughly $3,000 per year per Fahrenheit that has been changed into the system. So, for example, on the next graphic here, you can see for workers is working $100,000 per year. You can see here the benefits regarding the temperature differences that the worker can gain. We have the same figures equivalent in terms of ROI here, by seeing that when you calculate the differences of the performance of the CO2 into the room, you can analyze the annual economics benefits for workers who is also earning an average of $100,000 per year. If you imagine that these figures can be used for large corporate and you sum all the workers, we are talking about quite important level of money in terms of productivity. The fact that also you can automate your temperature systems by automation systems, you also have, of course, 5 times higher reduction cost instead of leaving the end user managing himself his temperature. And then same for ventilations. You have a very important energy cost saving by providing an automated IoT systems to control the ventilations. In terms of productivity, again, of $1,500 per person per year. So we discussed about the work performance here on the financial benefits on the slide that I just before. The value of the building by implementing this type of system in the buildings increase also the value of the building itself, its market value, and all the operational, more generally follow-up decision making about to fearing up to the operational time also bring added value. So at the end, when you sum all the value and benefits that you get by controlling your air quality and your temperature, you can save from 5 to 15% annual saving. Okay, so thank you very much. Now it's time to Bruno from Birdz to give us more insights about ROIs on other use cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicolas. Hi, my name is Bruno Hamamlian. I work at Birdz as the marketing, strategic and international business. When we talk about ROI and benefits, and I think it has been very well already introduced by the previous speakers, we need to get to a common ground about how do you define benefits. When you look into the details, one of the first things we have experienced at Birdz with more than 3.4 million of IoT devices operated every day via different LP1 technology, but since 4 years we definitely have made a switch towards LoRaWAN. It's the fact that actually we need to mitigate, I would say, benchmarking and comparison within use case. If you consider on one side new usages, most of the time coming up from innovative solution that was non-existing before, from existing solution that you can see on the right side, where we are more in the scope of reusing something that it is existing and sharing it, copying and adapting it within a community of experts and operational professionals in order to seek for the benefits. So there is one part of the benefits that can be brought by innovation, another part of the benefits that can be brought by the adoption rate of a client to use properly the solution LoRaWAN you are providing to them. To that extent, there is also a second category of benefit that we need to look into. And one thing that is defined by ROI is definitely the financial benefits. How much savings can you make out from using system A against the system B? And performances, time saving are definitely part, and money saving are part of the operation savings. But there are things into the benefits categories that you can also add up and quantify that are non-financial. Things that brought trust, integrity, and reliability to your client, because if you also think about non-financial benefits, you will increase the capacity of your user to increase faster the adoption rate of your digital services. To this extent, we can really list a very long number of benefits that we can categorize here, represented in 10 categories that we have at Birdsville. Yeah. From here, we're talking about environment, so energy, water, waste. So everything is linked to the quality of the asset you are monitoring, satisfaction from your staff, from your clients, the capacity to make financial saving, and also don't miss billings from inaccuracies in metrology or inaccuracies in billing systems. Always look and seek for end user and end customer satisfaction, because the more people get used and satisfied by the service, the more you will trigger massive adoption rate. So it's very important. And of course, response time. What I'm going to share with you now, it's according to use cases, how we have driven and built up some kind of experience on some ROI for environment. First case, water utilities. A lot of people within the LoRa ecosystems and beyond think about utilities only worthy through the business you can do around metering. It's very attractive to go to such market because in terms of number of point of connection, there are millions. But where is really the value of rendering a utility smarter? I think you've heard a lot about this use case in the city of Lyon, starting in 2014, and which is a very big smart water network. Over 54 municipalities and 400,000 metering points, plus some non-metering water IoTs, such as leak detectors, fire hydrants, water quality sensors, all matched and unified in a hybrid LP1 networks, mixing all proprietary system, public LoRaWAN network, private LoRaWAN network, in order to always strengthen the capacity to collect data and transform it into actionable info. In 2024, that will be the end of this contract period. And so far, what we can edit as key benefits is a lot that are, of course, financial, but a lot of financial benefits come from qualitative new benefits. For example, trying to make the water distribution network of Lyon less leaky by identifying more than 1,200 new leaks and repairing them. So you are not pushing clean water in a leaky distribution network. Driving actually the water efficiency from the production sites to the clients being increased by 8.2 points. That's a lot. Permitting the utility of Lyon to achieve the bar of 85% of consistent and permanent water efficiency above the 85%. Driving then the cancellation of the water agency penalties for non-compliancy with the target, representing 300,000 euro of penalty a year. And also in terms of operation, having the capacity to make energy bill, tremendous energy bill savings from water production plant, because with a less leaky distribution network, you don't need to capture more raw water to distribute to the clients. You can have the same quality of public services without capturing a lot of natural resources. We have also some winter period where water meters can be froze by very harsh winter. And when you have a client which the water meter has been destroyed by frost and that it doesn't have any more water, then it's a pain to manage. And with LoRaWAN smart water meter, we are able to monitor and forecast frost events and notify to the end clients to participate proactively to find means to thermically protect the water meter with blankets or isolation material in order to avoid the frost and the destruction of meters. Driving minus 37% of end user complaints annually. That's really the mix of non-financial and financial benefits. When you look into the figures, the overall project in terms of IoT digital solution from meter connectivity and data management and digital application to see, view, and act, it's a 14 million euro in the overall 10 years. And two metrics that we follow at Birdz. One is the adoption rate. So how much time the client has spent to fully use all the benefit sets we are providing them with our digital services. So 98% of the benefits were used, actively implemented by the clients in TEs. So it's very important to engage your client to use what you are promising him to achieve with the benefits of your system. And the global ROI has been achieved in 4.5 years. Very, very positive smart water network case. And you can see it's beyond metering. Other elements, and to make a complement to the voice of Nicolas regarding building. It has been said effectively that construction company needs to manage different assets when they are building a new facility or a new building. But when you look in the lifetime cycle of the building, the construction is just 20% of the overall cost of the operation of the building. 80% of the total cost of ownership of a building is linked to operational cost, energy, maintenance, and other costs related to obsolescence and VTC. So when you look actually, smart building and connected building, of course, energy efficiency is definitely a driver, but you have many more, like building automation, comfort for occupants and occupancy, safety and security. When you look today, we have a client that is managing 100 millions of euro of turnover, owning and renting building assets. It's a 500 company staff, and they are managing 1.6 million square kilometer. Not square meter, square meter, sorry. And over a very dispatch asset distribution geographically. And when we look the same way we have looked at the water utilities, what really are the challenges and the pain points that really need to be addressed to make a higher adoption rate of your digital services and solution with LoRaWAN? Reducing energy consumption, that's fundamental, it's clear. But also, it's all the part relating to monitoring various types of assets and centralizing all those operational and maintenance indicator into one hub, one data, one dashboard, one view, helping the building owner and its asset management director to be in a position to see, to understand, and to act whenever it is deemed to, according to multiple information they gathered from their building operation. When we look towards what are the benefits of these clients over a period of 5 years, the first thing that is very fundamental that they were not having in mind is that thanks to a better management of the environmental footprint of the buildings of their assets, with more than 500 sites, they reduced from minus 37% their carbon footprint, reducing and adjusting the energy within the building, and measure it through also indoor air quality monitoring in order to make sure that the heating, the boilers, the way people are using the rooms and the different in the building they can manage, I would say, saturation thresholds. Implementing a sustainability policy. So being now in a position to differentiate the way they manage building assets in a more greener approach, which is a differentiator in particular nowadays. And of course, very mathematical metrics. When you manage 8 million bills, you are very happy to be able to do that on real consumption and be in a position to reduce claims, because what you bill as a rental fee is something that can be described, which is precise, and which is available. For this kind of rollout deployment, it has been a total cost of ownership of the IoT digital and operation and deployment of 1.6 million euro. I said previously the adoption rate of the client in the timeline to make sure that he uses the system to the fullest in order to achieve benefits. It has been done to a significant 90% over a year, with good support, good training, and also a client engaged because they were motivated to deal with their pain points. ROI, 2 years. And as has been said previously, in the connected building, you can, during the construction and during the operational lifetime of the building, you can really find with LoRaWAN a large set of solutions that permits to really drive ROI. Thank you. And I head off now to Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar here. I'm going to be talking about the safe distance badge contact tracing solution that DigiKey deployed as their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, up until now, up until they deployed a solution, they would rely on someone reporting that they had a positive test. They would have to talk with that person, talk with other employees, maybe go through timesheets, things like that. That process was very prone to error, right? People would not remember who they spoke to or what they did. And as a result, to play it safe, they would have to cast a wider net, as we call it. They would have to have more people stay home and quarantine than otherwise they would, because they couldn't be certain that who'd been around the person tested positive. And all that process took a long time. And if someone tests positive for COVID, time is not something you have a lot of. You need to do contact tracing very rapidly, very quickly, get the appropriate employees quarantined, and the rest hopefully back safely at work. So they needed to implement a system to keep their employees at work as safely as possible. So they decided to use a wearable device versus, say, a phone app for a number of reasons I'll get into. And that wearable device would allow them to detect proximity events, as we call them, when two people get close to each other, and then do contact tracing on those proximity events by their HR department in a very quick and easy fashion, so that when they did get an incident, they could quickly respond and keep people safe and healthy. The device that they used was called the Safe Distance Badge from Option. And the reason why they chose this is, one, it doesn't require you to download any sort of app on your cell phone or anything like that. It's very non-intrusive. One of the #1 priorities of the workforce at DigiKey, as expressed in the survey they took, was privacy. And the last thing they wanted was something that they would wear that would track their every movement, you know, inhibit them from doing what they would normally do. They did not want their personal information recorded into different platforms that they could not see or have access to, and so forth. The Safe Distance Badge does all of that. It doesn't record any personal information. It doesn't actually track your position at all. It simply tracks interactions between badges, so that you have 100% privacy protection for your workforce. In addition, when two badges would get close together, they do a thing called alerting, where they can beep, they can vibrate, they can flash a light. That would tell the wearer of the badge that they are in too close proximity to another badge wearer. That DigiKey decided to disable. They just wanted to track the proximity interactions in a very passive manner and then when needed later, go back and use that information to do appropriate contact tracing. So the reason why they also use this badge is because they needed to cover large areas. DigiKey is a very large distributor. They have enormous warehouses, they have office spaces, they have numbers of different kinds of work environments. They needed a network that could be deployed across all of these and with good coverage, good reliability, and rapidly. LoRaWAN totally fits that bill. In addition, the low frequency in the US, this is sub-gigahertz operation, gives them good penetration into areas that they found problematic with other technologies. In addition to that, they needed to be able to have these badges not require users to do a lot to use them. In the perfect world, they just wanted the users or the employees to wear the badges, and that's it. Using LoRaWAN, that allowed them to do that. Badges will automatically connect to the network. The wearer doesn't have to do anything other than have the badge on their person and walk around with it. And one last thing is that these badges have very long battery life because the LoRaWAN network that's used is very light on the battery, so that employees can wear these badges for an entire work week, simply charge them up on the weekend and be ready to go on Monday. So how does their system actually work? Well, badges record interactions with other badges. So if two employees or visitors get too close to one another, in this case it would be 6 feet or 2 meters, the badges report what's called a proximity event. That is, that two badges are too close to each other. They will record the date and time of the event and the duration of the event as well, and send that using LoRaWAN up to the cloud, where it's stored in the safe distance platform. Each badge does this independently, so that if badge A comes close to badge B, badge A will report it to the cloud. Badge B will also report up to the cloud that it was too close to badge A. If an employee reports a positive COVID-19 test, the HR department can simply go into their platform and pull out what we call a contact tracing report that shows these proximity events, the dates, the times, the durations, and the HR department can know exactly who they would need to contact to keep everyone safe and healthy, having the right people quarantine and others who don't need to not have to quarantine. In addition, real world is kind of messy, right? So you may have a case where employee A has tested positive for COVID-19 and is around employee B. But then employee B is around employee C, and that may be a proximity event that you need to understand. The contact tracing report that DigiKey uses is multi-level, so they can get a very good understanding of the impact of a COVID report on their workforce and how to keep the maximum number of people safe and healthy. So this system actually had some pretty amazing results. First thing is that because it was LoRaWAN and it's easy to deploy, they were able to roll this out to their 2,500 strong workforce in a 2-week period. That's really fast for those of you who've done IT projects before. In addition to that, they had, during that time period, a number of employees that tested positive for COVID. And we picked a couple here, incidences, to show you the kind of results that an individual COVID positive test would cause. In one case, there was a department that had 23 people in it, and using the contact tracing report, they only needed to quarantine 4 employees out of the 23. Previously, they would have had to quarantine the entire department. That's an 83% reduction in the number of employees sent home from work, and yet keeping everyone still safe and healthy. In another incident, they had a group of 19, and due to the contact tracing report, they only had to send 3 home to quarantine. That's an 85% reduction in people sent home to quarantine. The results of this is that these groups were generally in their warehouse area, and if people aren't at work, they can't ship product. So with having these additional people at work, they were able to send out 20,000 additional orders that otherwise would never have been shipped due to employees at home. quarantining. As a result of that, the system paid for itself in only 5 positive COVID-19 tests, which is private information, but it's on the order of just a few months at DigiKey. So this has a very strong realizable ROI. Now, I know I've gone over this very briefly at a very high level, and I'm sure you have questions, so we would be happy to answer them at the Q&A session coming up. Next up is Josh Cox, the CEO of Oxit. He's going to be discussing decision strategy and solution expansion for IoT ROI. Take it away, Josh.
Thank you, David. Hope everyone's doing well today. I appreciate the LoRa Alliance inviting us to participate. So I'll briefly introduce Oxit. Oxit's an IoT engineering services company. So we create custom engineered solutions as well as acting as a systems integrator. So perhaps jumping on DigiKey and ordering a tracker from Actility and cobbling that together with a couple of other sensors to create a solution. We've been exposed to now LoRaWAN for about 8 years. I had the lucky opportunity to choose the network that the Red Cross was deploying in Nairobi, Kenya, and landed on LoRaWAN, and we've been, I guess, a little stuck on it ever since. Today, we've got a couple of million end devices out there running across hundreds of products, and excited today to just kind of dig into ROI a bit and how we look at clients who are successful in that. So, you know, really ROI, I kind of split it into two camps. One is that those innovation for innovation's sake, and the others who are kind of nailing it down and wanting to understand the math behind it. But today I'm going to dig a bit more into, you know, those early decisions and how that works, as well as how you see solutions expand across an organization. I'll go through a couple of client use cases and offer some final thoughts there. So, you know, when you're looking at going and deploying a LoRaWAN solution or any IoT solution for that matter, one of the easy places to find that value is looking for the low-hanging fruit. And I find that's often in places that your company's already spending money. It's a great place to kind of put together a proof of concept and actually see if you can curb that expense and then look at deploying that more broader to your company. So I'll dig into a couple of examples there, but we certainly had a client who was looking into custodial staff. How do you take care of a bathroom in a facility? So you're looking at having custodial staff visit and monitor that restrooms for everything from paper towel, soap dispenser, toilet paper, and all of those things. So you have a clear expenditure that you can point to and say, hey, if we can curb that, you know, and how much does the solution cost? And that math's relatively easy to put together. It's also easy to put together a proof of concept and get that solution out there to validate that in the marketplace. So what's great, though, is about going through that operation, putting those systems in, is finding those what I'll call hidden ROIs or indirect ROIs. Things like customers spend more money if the bathroom's clean. There's the ROIs that you can't really point to initially, but they really have real value. You know, kind of going back to, I think, water metering is another great one where, you know, the fact that you don't have someone visiting those meters is great, but also if you can impact the, you know, the water loss and reduce leaks and things of that nature, those are the indirect ROIs that can really make projects kind of pick up and run. The other piece that we see a lot of adoption and helping out with ROI is the expansion nature. So you get in, you run that proof of concept, and we productize a solution that's perhaps not the main company's focus. So maybe you have a business that's split into consumer and industrial, and we develop a LoRaWAN solution for the consumer segment. And then now the industrial segment's looking at that and going, hey, it'd be fun to pull that into our industrial products. Or perhaps you've created a whole new market for your company. So we had a client, Simmons, who's traditionally been just a plumbing company providing plumbing parts and things of that nature. And we came in and created an IoT solution centered around helping monitor plumbing infrastructure. So you create this new kind of existing infrastructure, and now suddenly the core business is thinking, hey, how can we adopt that and how can we use that for some of our plumbing parts? And you get that symbiotic relationship. So now the core business is cross-selling that connected platform, and the collected platform is now cross-selling the core business. So those kinds of expansion type ROI is really valuable and allows companies to succeed. And I think the right companies that are able to capture that are really able to leapfrog and make that ROI kind of multiplicative across their organization and really see real success. So I mentioned Simmons and their solution. Again, I just think it's a great kind of detail around how you can create that solution and then expand it out to the rest of your core business. And it's just really cool to see how excited now that entire company is around adopting IoT into lots of different places and seeing them come together around this and really reach that next level of ROI. Additionally, we have WaterCop, which is owned by Dynaquip. They came in and had customers ready to buy a solution. So we put together a quick proof of concept utilizing LoRaWAN, and we're able to get its product out there, get a proof of concept running, and validate that customers are more than willing to pay for this and that the technology works for them. And now they're adopting it and moving it into their whole entire company, as well as migrating it into their industrial side. So it's just exciting to see how companies, from an ROI standpoint, start with a proof of concept, implement that into their larger organization, and then how they can look, their larger organization can really start to cross-sell and have that symbiotic relationship. So that's kind of a quick synopsis from us. Thanks again for having us. And if you have any IoT needs, we'd be happy to help you on that journey. So I guess I'll pass it back to you now, Ashley.
All right. Thank you, Josh, and thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you again to all of the LoRa Alliance members participating on the webcast today. If you too are interested in becoming a member, check out the membership information document in the resources section on your screen, or reach out to admin@LoRaAlliance.com to learn more information. And now we'll move into the question and answer part of the webcast and discuss some of the questions that came in from the audience. Just give us a minute here as we have a look at the questions submitted, and then we'll get started.
All right, we are now ready to begin the Q&A portion of this session. Just to note, Josh Cox from Oxit had to fall out, so instead we're joined by Peter O'Connor, VP of Engineering from Oxit. So our first question is going to be on what ROI outcome surprised you the most? I'd like to invite Dave from Option to go ahead and start us out with an answer to that.
Sure, thank you. If I had to pick one, I think it would be the speed of return. Remember, this all occurred, there was a solution designed, developed, deployed, and achieving ROI well within a year. That's kind of unusual. I'm used to more 2-3 year ROI returns, right, for IoT systems. So I think the speed with which ROI was achieved in this case was pretty surprising.
Excellent.
Josh or David, do you have anything to add to that?
Peter here, subbing in for Josh at this time. Yeah, I would like to add to this. There was one specific use case I can think of where what surprised me was how much the different areas of development and deployment actually accumulated in ROI from different areas, and I'll explain what I mean. So, in the example that you saw Josh speak about there in the podcast, he mentioned this water metering system for Simmons. And when we engaged with Simmons originally, they actually had another system that they were developing before that used a different technology. Now, the issue was they had a system that the range was a lot shorter, so they actually had to use a lot of gateways and things like this to bridge the gap between the devices and the internet. So once we introduced LoRa to the system, the range benefit alone was so significant where they could reduce the number of gateways, the infrastructure cost essentially for setting up the system that they wanted. That was already pretty impressive. But the other cool things that stemmed from that was, one, apart from the range extension, the smaller amount of gateways. But now this infrastructure could actually be used for multiple different types of sensors and these sort of things. So what started out as first, let's measure the temperature of water and see if we can deliver a more comfortable experience to the customer through issue resolution quicker than what you'd find normally. But now you could say, okay, let's add a leak sensor here, let's add a flow sensor here, and now they could take advantage of the infrastructure that was already there, was already minimized for one application, and LoRa is able to support hundreds or thousands of devices. That already helped. Another thing that came from this was LoRa is very power efficient, so therefore increasing the battery life, which was over double in the case that we came in and implemented our system with. They had less truck rolls for maintaining devices, and their forecast for how many times they'll have to go through and service a device's battery, it extended, well into the future, which would obviously save them money, and how many times they would have to do that. And then just to kind of bring this to a close here, the other thing was, now that they have the system in place where they've optimized the cost of all the different components by having less infrastructure that their sensor needs to communicate with, they could offer this package to multiple hotels. They're getting very popular in that space, and they're already getting very positive feedback from their customers with related to issues that are found much sooner than they would have, which is actually saving their customers at the end more money in the way they run their business. So overall, it was surprising to see how such a small decision early on could affect so many different aspects of this rollout from start to end.
Great, thank you so much, Peter. It looks like we've had a question come in. I think it's a great question, so I'd like to touch on it briefly. So when you're creating a POC and your success measuring is pretty minimal in the beginning, sometimes it's always not a big drastic impact to the customer. How do you make that customer believe in the potential ROI benefits in the short term? Nicholas, could you take a stab at that question for us?
Yes, of course. There are two aspects, of course. The first aspect is to be able to do quick, easy proof of concept. And for this, many companies, including ourselves, we have created packages, offers package, all included, that they can be even ordered through a marketplace. And then you can really install and test the use cases quite easily. Then when it's done, because it's quite affordable, with the customer, you can do the analysis about their process. You need to think about the way they manage their process, specifically regarding the use cases that they want to improve. And you can analyze the cost. Oftenly, when you have, let's say, you have a human interventions, when you have to replace someone to do something to be more effective, it's easy to calculate the cost on one side and then calculate the fact that by replacing the technology, how much and what you can gain.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that?
I'll pitch one thing into this. Another one of our things, one of our clients there that Josh spoke about in the presentation, they had, again, another system that they had before, and it was based on a different technology. We came in, we showed them a proof of concept, and the first thing that they responded was, we love this range. It tripled the distance that they were able to get in a crowded space already with many walls and sort of things between the sensors and the endpoint to get up to the gateway, to the internet. And that was already really impressive, and I'm pretty sure once we showed them that, they immediately got the reason why this was such a good investment to start with this technology.
Great. Thanks for adding that in there. Appreciate that feedback. Let's see. So we also have a question around how do I drive the ROI exercise with clients? I think that there's probably a different perspective from each of our panelists for that. I wanted to see, Bruno, is anything you can share on answering that question?
Yes, indeed, Ashley. It really depends on what business you're working in.
the experience we have at Birdz and Velia is with regulated market, municipalities, which actually the drivers for digital transformation are way different from non-regulated markets, notably because there is this reality behind the public services. So in regulated markets, most of users and then clients, they're quite slow to adapt to a new way of thinking and operating because they fear that the service public obligation they have might be disturbed or discontinued. So they are very sensitive to that. So when you look to the ROI, I would say being regulated and non-regulating, the first thing I think is to really know your lead and your clients about the pain points. What makes them do nightmares at night? And it's very operational most of the time. And there are lots of people in companies that you need to talk to before reaching the right group of people that want to change and that really have the need. So the first thing I would say is retargeting the people that have nightmares. The second tip would be then at this very moment, you need, of course, to make a comparison between what are their pains and what you can really bring on the table as a benefit. So the second thing is really know your offering as a limit of usage. So what you can really do and what is out of the reach. Because the worst thing that could happen from POC to massive adoption and large-scale project is a client that starts doubting that you can deliver. So I think the question before was was around POCs and engaging clients. So if the POC is not totally satisfactory in terms of built in the system and the feature you can operate and deliver, then you won't scale. So it's very important to understand at each step of scaling how you support and accompany your clients to grow, because digital transformation is about transformation as well. So it's believing in technology that most of people are sometimes phobic. It depends on markets, but not all people are techno-savvy. And when it comes to financial impacts, then you start to talk to people that will be sometimes conservative, sometimes innovative, but most of the time conservative. And around that, it's very important that you can be trustworthy. So just deliver what you promise, and not the other way around.
Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. Do any of the other panelists have something they'd like to add to that? Peter or Dave?
This is Dave. I do, actually. We've done a number of different ROI exercises, and one of the things that's really important, two things actually are extremely important, is understanding where your end state is, where you want to be when this is all said and done, right? So an explicit, clear understanding of your goal, if I put it that way. That makes all the difference because it also allows you to know when you're done, which is a problem in many areas when you come with IoT solutions. And the other thing is accurately understanding what your ROI will be. Being too low is almost as bad as being too high is almost as bad as being too low, right? So going through an exercise and understanding the ROI space, because very often you have greater ROI than you expect. And you're not doing your customers any favors if you at the end go, oh, hey, you're actually saving twice as much as you would have. You would have had greater engagement in the beginning. You would probably had a more positive experience with your customer if they knew the full extent of the ROI. So those are the two things that I would say you need to highlight with your customers to make sure everything is clear ahead of time.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Thank you all for this discussion today. Dave, Nicholas, Bruno, and Peter, thanks for sitting down with us and chatting on this. I'm going to close out our QA session, and thank you to our listeners and our audience. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.